Hi, everyone. I'm Gonzalo, and along with my colleague Leo, we are super excited to give you a look behind the scenes of our work in the design system team at Zalando. Today, we want to take you on a journey to experience how a new EU regulation tested our system and required us to perform one of the most complex component updates. All this with a small price tag of 400 million euro. But before diving deeper into the topic, we'll start with a short intro to our team and how we work. At Zalando, we are part of the ZDS team, which, as you might guess, stands for Zalando Design System. We are a team of 18 people, formed by product designers, content designers, and software engineers from web, iOS, and Android. ZDS covers the Zalando fashion store, which runs in 21 languages and has more than 50 million active customers. We, as ZDS, support around 200 designers and 400 engineers in more than 50 teams. How people work together is a crucial part of the system. We work under a centralized model, but with a shared ownership for some components, where we collaborate as partners with feature teams. These feature teams are responsible for different parts of the customer journey, which is why they have deeper business knowledge. So let's take the product card component as an example. This is a simplified visualization of the product card. There's a lot of complexity underneath, and we will get into that later. ZDS owns the foundations, in this case, image components, icon button components, colors, and type tokens. Later, feature teams use these foundations to compose more complex components with specific business needs. They own and maintain these components, both in code and design. And under the shared ownership, they still align with ZDS to make any update happen. So to navigate through this, we built a system of support to help with any question and connect teams with other component owners. This is because these shared components can be used by any other team. Our support system includes office hours, a public chat with around 500 members, a chatbot to find resources faster, and much more. And now we will show you how this looks like in practice.
Yeah, beginning of this year, we faced this challenge of untangling a new EU regulation and translate it into a customer experience. This project was a good example that design systems can and need to be flexible and adapt to evolving needs. It also shows how sometimes touching just a small piece of the system can be like pulling a thread because you discover obstacles at every step of the way. But these type of projects are great opportunities to mature and integrate findings back into your processes. So we want to guide you through it from beginning to the end and talk about what helped us and also share all the learnings along the way. And the starting point for all this was the new regulation called the Omnibus Directive. A quick introduction to what it is about. Did you ever think that a deal looks too good to be true? Or imagine you're browsing an item that when you want to purchase it the next day shows a different price. And as a heavy browser myself, I know that this can leave you a little suspicious. But there are several reasons for a price fluctuation. Just in some cases, it's a pattern called price tracking. And this happens when vendors artificially hiked up the price to show a greater discount later. Now, in order to prevent that and enhance the protection of consumers, the new EU regulation called for a change in discount communication as of May 2022. So now sellers need to display the 30 days lowest price in case of an announcement of a price reduction. So price tracking is something that Zalando never did, but we still had to adapt our price display to comply with the new regulation. And those can sometimes sound intimidating, but for us it was very clear that this was a great opportunity to provide more transparency on the price history for our customers. And today the heroes of our story are the people that we work with. So each chapter will introduce you to a colleague that joined the process as a key contributor or collaborator. And this is just a really small selection. There were many more involved. And that's because we believe that design systems are socio-technical systems, meaning that above all, they are made by people and for other people. So the collaboration and interaction is really where the magic happens.
So we will start with Joy. Joy is a principal product designer in the product and category experience team. He led the project from the design side to tackle this new EU omnibus regulation. So we call this project simply Omnibus. Our first touch point with Joy was in one of our ZDS office hours, which runs almost daily. For this, we have a weekly rotating captain role, where one member of each ZDS design and engineering team will dedicate 80% of their time to traffic control all questions from the public chat, and also attend the office hours. This helps us to distribute the responsibilities in the team. If designers touch base early on in the process, like in this case, it helps us to identify the level of support that is needed. During those office hours, Joy presented some options to change the price display across the customer journey. And since this will have a large impact on many different system components, we saw that it would be beneficial to involve ZDS in the process. Shortly after the office hours, Leo joined the project team as a ZDS enabler. The enabler role is also part of our support system, but is specifically designed for high-priority projects. The enabler serves as a single point of contact and consult from ZDS side to speed up alignment processes. In this case, Leo was also supporting hands-on due to the urgency of the task. So yeah, being an enabler can be really fun because you get to collaborate with different teams across the organization and also get a glimpse on their day-to-day work. It also helps to build empathy towards both sides. For system designers, it's a great opportunity to observe how designers use the system, what are their pain points, and if they can find what they're looking for. For feature team designers, on the other hand, can learn more about the system thinking lens.
So I was super excited to get started, and shortly after the proper onboarding, I also realized that we were facing multiple challenges. First of all, it was a really complicated problem to solve, why there were no reference points from competitors, because the regulations hadn't come into effect yet. And then second, due to the hard deadline of the regulation, we had roughly 4 weeks to finalize the solution design phase because we needed to run quantitative tests before the go-live end of May. And next to other parts of the experience, we had to touch one of our most complex components in the system, the product card. And if all of that wouldn't put enough pressure, then maybe the fact that if we won't be able to get it right and overcome all of those, the fine of not complying with a new law by end of May could be around 400 million euros, so 4% of the annual turnover. But it always seems impossible until it's done, right? And also Joy has this mantra that he truly embodies: never underestimate the importance of having fun. So I knew no matter what, it's going to be an interesting journey. Let's talk about the product card for a moment. When looking here at the product card before and after Omnibus, can you spot the 3 differences? Maybe you can, but probably you wouldn't guess that this simple change contains lots of complexity. And that's because the component is optimized for every pixel, because already a small height increase can have a significant impact on conversions in the business due to the number of items shown in the viewport. So this component alone is famous for giving designers headaches. It's basically the heart of our e-commerce system, and maybe you have a similar component in your system too, but this one sometimes needs some more attention due to its central function. We're currently counting 10 different product card components in our library and tons of variants. They are used in many different contexts, like checkout, wish list, email, and all of those are owned by different teams. They can be stacked vertically, horizontally, in light and dark mode, contain different information like delivery flags, sustainability, sale. And it's also one of the most inserted components. So only one product card, the catalog web one, has 40K instances and is used in 400 files. So we got started, and we did this by planning our ways of working. What has helped us in the past is inviting other designers and engineers to our ZDS internal rituals. So Joy attended our design critique sessions regularly, And at the same time, there were almost daily design check-ins with product and legal and content design for Omnibus, where they evaluated the different design options on a scale of high to low commercial risk in Figma. And the constant through all of these options was always the customer experience. In the early stages, we explored design options using wireframes. Later, we worked stressing the components until they needed to be detached to accommodate the additional information in the fixed height that we had for the product card. And switching the perspective here to a system user gave me a lot of valuable insights. The time-consuming part of our work was actually to build all the screens from scratch, figure out the status quo spacing, considering localizations and different breakpoints. And this is just a snippet of the heat maps that we created to test the edge cases in different currencies, because everything needed to fit in our card with a fixed height. Due to the shared ownership, some of the cards were also built differently in Figma. Most of them weren't updated in a while, so they were missing the latest features, auto layout or toggles. And to swap the price to sale, it took about 7 clicks per card because we had to hide or show the layers manually. Something that was incredibly useful is the custom-built ZDS plugin called the Lid-In. And this allows us to automatically fill the Figma designs with real data from articles published on the Zalando website. With one click, the plugin gets information for one or multiple articles and populates the Figma layers that you've selected. So after just a couple of weeks of exploring and testing the options with customers, we landed on this new price display that ticked all the boxes. It really felt like a breakthrough, as it was a great compromise of a solution that's customer-centric and balances all the risks. The only dimension it didn't solve for was the product cut height. And the product card, as mentioned, had a fixed height before, which was chosen consciously because of the horizontal alignment and layouts with multiple cards, like a catalog. But with this new pricing information that we had to the card, in some cases, the content would overflow and could break the UI.
So this is when ZDS engineers got involved more closely. Yuta is our ZDS web engineer manager, and he was pulling all the strings to align the engineers' efforts. So for the product card height issue, we all got together in one virtual room, counting app and web engineers, and brainstormed on mitigation strategies to allow the card to host the new pricing detail. So the domain knowledge of ZDS engineers was key at this point, of course. It allowed us to evaluate different options and find a specific approach to solve the high increase issue. For this, we introduced the row-based dynamic height, meaning that the tallest card will determine the height of the row. At that time, we already had a ZDS adoption rate of 95% in all screens across the entire experience. So that helped us to roll out the dynamic height on all platforms simultaneously, and also run many A/B tests to make sure that this won't have any negative impact, which luckily it didn't. So as you can see, we didn't only change the pricing across all different touchpoints, we also designed an experience to onboard customers and to learn more about the price history. And after all this, Omnibus went live in time, and we had a big moment of relief and celebration. But there was, of course, the one thing left to do, which it was basically to properly document all the changes, especially the new price display, the dynamic height, and of course, make our community aware of these changes. ZDS provides different Figma libraries and starter files where we expose usage guidelines, examples, specs, etc. So we started with the library component updates, of course. And even us, as seasoned designers, we were a bit nervous about making cross-library changes. Like Leo mentioned, product cards are used in around 400 files, so you really want to avoid breaking changes.
That's the moment when I reached out to Gonzalo, who helped planning on how to navigate the updates for all the cross-library changes. When the new Figma branching feature got released a few months before, we were really eager to integrate branching into our workflow. So Gonzalo back then pitched naming conventions and facilitated a training for us, which now helped us to use branching in a structured way. It seemed that this really came at the right time and offered a safe way to experiment and isolate the work on this complex component update. Remembering the struggle from working with the product card myself, I was also really keen to give the component structure and documentation a makeover. And the aspiration here was really to relieve designers when working with a card, save them some clicks, and clear up any confusion. At the same time, I was hoping to be able to reduce the number of variants, hence also the maintenance effort on our side, by using the new component property features like Booleans. We had two options: update the pricing in each card individually or create a product price component. And the logical solution was the second one, since this allowed us to create consistency between the design and code, as we already had a product price component in our web and app library, and also would allow us to perform updates globally if we would ever need to change the price display again. A lot of things that we might consider just text actually deserve to be their own components, especially if they're as widely reused as the price. And because we wanted to integrate these long edge cases as well in the documentation, we added the so-called config level price to the product price component. This is shown when different sizes have different prices. And it's probably the property name that we iterated the longest on. We aligned with engineers on how to name it in code. We asked colleagues in and outside the team and talked to content design. And ultimately, we decided to go with the most obvious and straightforward solution, the from price, because the main goal was here to make it easy to understand and easy to use. So we had all pieces together. I went all in, created one branch for all the updates. But quickly after, I had to take a step back, because this was simply not a safe way to proceed, since there were too many changes in one branch, and this would not allow us to sequence all the releases. So instead, we merged the product price component first and proceeded with separate branches for each card component. Starting here with the most used component, because we could release it first. And this also allowed us to review the changes separately with each team and establish a proper approval process before publishing. The co-ownership only works if we make sure teams are actually informed and part of the updates. So I also set up a review with each of the teams and sent an approval request before merging the changes. And ever since, we integrated branching into our workflow for other contributions. We also talked with other teams to get feedback on how they would use the product card or what they struggle with and integrate that into the changes. So some good learnings about using branches are: start small, try to capture all possible changes in one branch, but also make it manageable. And as a rule of thumb, what worked for us is consider just one branch per component. Sequence the merges. Does one branch depend on one another? Which one should we merge first? And then plan the release. Organize how to announce the new features aligned with the code releases. And also, maybe an obvious one, but don't copy things from one branch to another.
Andres is a web engineer in ZDS who worked closely with us through the whole process. And as we were changing the product card structure, we noticed that these changes will break the Siletin plugin, which is directly connected on how designers use the product card. So Andres took ownership of the plugin and worked through the fixes and adding the new component properties. But he also worked adding multi-language and multi-currency support. So now we can mock in one click a long price in English versus in French-speaking Switzerland, which is usually one of the longest currency. And we felt that we were almost there. One of our last efforts was to run a bug batch, including ZDS designers and friends. So we gathered all forces to detect the issues before publishing, especially for overrides and missing variants. To be able to identify as many issues as possible, we did this in a structured way, meaning that for the session, we created a document with links to each branch, and on those branches, we added a Figma template with instruction on how to test the component, how to stress out the component, and how to test it against the plugin. And this allows us to resolve one bug after the other. Honestly, there's a gap between what we were trying to achieve with the Pro Card update and the final results. The component properties allowed us to build a very flexible component where we can expose all the features using toggles, which was one of the ideas that we had in the beginning. Ultimately, we have more variance than before, but a significant improvement in usability, since now, for example, we can toggle sale with only one click instead of the 7 that we had before. We also identify future opportunities for the Pro Card and the Accelerate plugin. Thanks to Figma new nested instances that is currently in beta, we will be able to reduce the number of variants significantly. And finally, yes, we successfully published all the updates.
The most rewarding part was definitely the excitement of the feature designers when we shared the updates in the public chat, but also during our demo session that we run. And it gave us a clear indication that we were moving in the right direction, but of course it's a journey to get things right, so we always encourage designers to share feedback when experimenting with a new card. So what's the key takeaway from all this? Finding peace in the unknown might be a good start. But for us, above all, it was just amazing to see what we were able to achieve collectively and experience the support and the commitment of everyone involved. Some of the learnings come down to the basic principles, like design systems aren't made in a lab. So seek feedback where you haven't done it before and find opportunities to listen to your users more closely and observe. So we believe that if we were facing a similar challenge right now, we would be well equipped due to the knowledge and tools and processes that we have evolved. And a new regulation is actually coming our way that requires to show a longer volume price for beauty articles. So instead of gram and milligram, we will need to show the price per liter and per kilo. I first thought it was a joke. But thanks to our future-proof solutions, this will be an easy one now. And for us, the one learning that stood out was treat everyone around you as co-learners and build empathy between system and feature teams, because we have so much to learn from one another. Thank you.
Thank you.